The Mirror brings you After the Bell in association with Betfair.
Hello and welcome to After the Bell, Mirror Fighting's boxing show in association with Betfair. We are coming to you 24 hours later this week after Eddie Hearn's experimental Sunday night show, which happened to clash with the craziest day in Premier League history. Manchester United were hit for 6, Liverpool were hit for 7, but even Baranchyk and Jose Zepeda hit each other for 8 in one of the Fight of the Year candidates. I'm Martin Domin, joined by George Groves and Declan Taylor. The three amigos back together again. If that's what you want to call us, I'm sure you have other names. Guys, we'll start with that fight over in America. Super lightweight, Zepeda winning by a fifth round stoppage. Quite a stunning fight. A perfect fight for social media, really. You can sum it up in, I think they did a tweet, 48-second clip, all the knockdowns, and then actually a spectacular finish.
Go on, Dick.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was one of them, wasn't it? I didn't stay up to watch it, I'll be honest, and it was like, what? I was expecting a good fight just based on styles. Obviously wasn't expecting that to happen. Zepeda as well, with a massive finish. I never thought he was, a massive, big punch like that. It was ridiculous to finish. If you haven't seen it, go and check it out. I mean, go and check the whole fight out. Mad. And Zepeda proving he's right in there. I mean, he has already sort of proved he's right up in that elite, but, he doesn't really get mentioned that much when we talk about Josh Taylor, Prograis, Ramirez, obviously who's someone who's beaten him. The only other defeat was against Terry Flanagan, that weird fight. That's 5 years ago now, I think, at Manchester Velodrome. I remember being there. It was bizarre, and his shoulder went after like a round or whatever it was. So, yeah, he's proved himself right back in there. But not only has he proved that he's right at the top, but he's got everyone talking about him again. Crazy knockout, crazy fight. I saw a lot of sort of boxing hipsters in the morning after going, well, they're both just swinging all the time. It's like, that's what a lot of people want to see, isn't it? They want to see action. It's not like there are a couple of novices just windmilling either. It's just that they both sort of let their hands go, and that was what happened. It was just incredible fight. More of that. And yeah, I'd love to see Zepeda in with all of them.
I mean, right now, especially, George, given what's going on, people just want to... They kind of just want a bit of fun, right? It might not, I mean, listen, we can all appreciate a good technical display, but sometimes you just want two guys bashing each other around the ring.
Yeah, why not, eh? With a tremendous finish, maybe I'm one of them boxing fans who I'm eager for it to end. It's a bit strange, if I know a fight, if I'm about to review a fight and I know it's gone 12 rounds, I am much less excited than if it's been 3 ferocious rounds. But a tremendous finish. He's up there, definitely up there, and he's in the mix now for, if Ramirez is next, I don't know if it is next, if there's odds on it or whatnot. But tremendous finish. Great action. That's what you want.
I mean, we've spoken about the division, of course, before with Josh Taylor, with Jose Ramirez. It's not the best time almost to be knocking on the door of a world title shot because there's just like so many blockades in the way. I think he now does earn himself a shot at Ramirez. He lost by majority decision in their first fight, but that means little when Ramirez has got to fight Jack Catterall. Even if he does that, then he's got to they'll want to fight Josh Taylor. So. Was that for the silver? Was that for the silver title, WBC silver, which we already know doesn't mean an awful lot in terms of rankings. Well, I mean, it's a glorified eliminator, but it doesn't really guarantee you a mandatory shot. WBC don't really, although they say they do. They're not like the IBF. They're not enforcing anything. So I would have to say it's pretty low down the list. Like you say, Catterall sort of comes first, Taylor comes second, and then Zepeda. I don't know. I wouldn't expect to see it. And also Ramirez is beating him. I think it was majority decision. I remember he wasn't at the races really that night. Says it was his worst performance of his career. So you would have to think he wouldn't be desperate to go and give him another shot. And I'm pretty sure the silver title wouldn't do much for him. I don't know, George. You obviously boxing mandatories and all sorts of stuff. WBC wise, they're pretty fluid about it, aren't they?
Yeah, you got like there's. I won a WBC silver title, and it's more of anything than a rankings fight, and it lets the WBC know that your target is for the WBC belt. So it's a good one to have, definitely, but no, it definitely doesn't confirm you in a position to fight for the WBC. That's then usually up for sort of a negotiation. And more than anything, you want to put a time frame on the WBC for you to become a mandatory with a set date. If you look at Dillian Whyte, for example, was number one with the WBC, meant absolutely nothing. People thinking, his shot's going to come any moment now. But his management didn't get him in a position where there was a time frame involved. Sometimes they want you to box to achieve that time frame. You say, right, well, if you win your next fight, you'll be challenging for a world title within the next 3 to 5 months or something like that. But that's where like your management team or your promotional team would have to come and step in and make it happen, make it count. You're relying on a good relationship with the WBC at this point, as well as fighting someone worthy of pushing you into a mandatory position. So you want them to be a ranked WBC fighter as well. So, yeah, but it's better. It's definitely the right thing to have, and it'll push you right on your way, but doesn't actually guarantee you anything. Yeah, IBF's a little bit more straightforward, but usually you will box into you'll win a mandatory position that will get you into 1 or 2. Then you've got to wait till someone else fills the second spot, fight that person, then become the number one mandate. I'm not even sure if they're number one, then they might be elevated to just mandatory. And if you think about that process, that could be well over 12 to 18 months to get into a mandatory position. Usually with the IBF, because they like to have mandatories coming up, and usually the champions like to get their mandatories out of the way, they'll just filter through the list, and whoever's on there and the next available opponent, they'll have it. So that's what essentially I think Josh Taylor did the week before. He got a mandatory, an IBF mandatory out of the way. So he's got a bit of breathing room to maybe have a voluntary before trying to set up a unification with Ramirez or whoever that may be.
And I guess if you're Zepeda or any other sort of just behind the world champions, you could just wait for maybe a year, and then whoever becomes undisputed world champion then just gives up the belts and moves up a division. So you could hang around, or you could go and fight Regis Prograis, and that'd be a good fight day.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head though, because it's a big toss-up, isn't it? It's like, it was what Dillian Whyte was up to, wasn't it? It was like, yeah, do you sit there and wait and maybe get a shot, or someone moves up? Like we actually did see exactly that at 10 stone with Crawford moving up when he had all the belts. Usyk did the same in cruiserweight. So then you do get an opportunity. You don't have to beat a champion necessarily. You have a vacant title, for instance. But or you go and try and earn some money and get in big fights and get people talking about you, but risk getting beat or risk whatever might happen. I mean, Dillian Whyte didn't sit around. He went and boxed Oscar Rivas, and we all know what happened. Although he won, we all know what the repercussions of that fight were. And then, obviously, he got knocked out by Alexander Povetkin. So it's like, what do you do? It's a bit like, it reminds me a bit like, when you're a sub-goalkeeper at Man City and you pick up 60 grand a week, but you never play. And you're like, so what? I'm getting paid. I haven't got the pressure of playing. It's cool. And then if my chance comes, it's like, sweet. Or like, what are you doing it for? What are you doing it for? Like, especially at his age and in the current climate and whatnot, it's like, yeah, go and fight Regis Prograis. And I'm sure he'd fight, like Zepeda would fight anyone. He wouldn't be happy sitting around on the bench for Man City. I don't know if he's a good goalkeeper. Probably is. Got good hands.
Would you reckon, George, better to sort of sit out, wait for a possible shot, or just, be in fan-friendly fights that will potentially take you to another level, at least in terms of your sort of stature?
Well, if you're going to be involved in the big fights, you essentially want to get paid for it. So it's got to be, the fight's got to generate the money that's going to pay you your purse, and this is tough times. There's fights taking place with no crowds, not everything's pay-per-view worthy, of course, and even then, the pay-per-view figures might not be through the roof. So it might be a good time to sort of keep busy, wait, especially if you're in a division where it looks like someone could clean up and then move on and vacate. And then obviously you're not all jostling for one belt. There's 4 belts to spread out amongst, the top 10 or 15 contenders. And if you're in a good position, then you can strike. Prograis is a very good fighter. If you're going to go into that sort of fight without a world title on the line, you might be rolling the dice a little bit because, it's definitely a fan-friendly fight and you want to keep busy and you want a legacy and the rest of it, you want to get paid. But ultimately, you got to be clever too and you got to work out, is that a calculated risk that's worthwhile or not? I'm not sure. I think sometimes it just comes down to the individual, the fighter itself, whether they want to, whether they back themselves or not, whether they just need to keep busy or not. Worried that a year or so might go past without them being tested or in a position where they have to knuckle down and improve. So it's a tough one. It's hard. It is really hard to gauge, as well as the opportunities there for these guys to fight anyway. Because there's not as many dates out there that are paying good money. They're keeping the fighters busy.
I mean, of course, Regis Prograis, I'm sure, does want the rematch with Josh Taylor, but he's got to be realistic, and that's another fight that's not going to happen anytime soon. Should he go on to fight Zepeda, he would be the 7-4 on favourite. Zepeda 11-8. And for some reason, should Zepeda ever fight Josh Taylor, the similar odds, Taylor would be 9-4 on, and Zepeda 7-4. Hopefully, some good fights to come in that division in the new year. Let's move on to Sunday night now in the illustrious setting of Milton Keynes. Joshua Buatsi returned after over 400 days out. He took on Marko Kalic, getting the stoppage in the 7th round. It wasn't plain sailing, George. Was some of that down, do you think, to the sort of long time out? Was Marko Kalic better than we thought he's going to be, or maybe a combination of the two?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's got to be tough fighting after this long out for someone like Joshua Buatsi, who has made real good progress since turning professional after winning the medal at the Olympics. On paper, I think this was his toughest test. Someone unbeaten with good amateur pedigree. So the fact that I think it was his toughest test in the ring made a lot of sense. He had to give away a lot of height, which is something new to Joshua, but it performed really well. Got caught and he said it was a thumb in the eye, which it might have well been. Couldn't exactly see, but he had a nasty welt that come up around the eye, and that definitely took him a long time to gain his composure or just to reset himself. And maybe it just might have been the first time in his pro career where a tiny bit of anxiety set in, something that wasn't going exactly how he felt it should be. And it must be so weird at the moment fighting in television studios, basically, arena or not. There's no one there. It's definitely silent. That might have an added sort of anxiety feel to it. So he had a couple of moments, nothing too sticky, and then a great finish in the end. I think he hurt Kalic, and he sort of, I think there was an injury maybe there that afterwards Buatsi said about. He thought the guy's jaw was broke. So don't know whether it was he was trying to signal to his corner to say there's something not right here, and the corner threw in the towel. I'm not sure how I'd be feeling if I'm Buatsi right now. Being out the ring for so long, coming back on a Sunday, Milton Keynes. It felt like it was put together at relatively late notice. I don't know. There's something I'm wondering. Is there something on his chest that he wants to open up about? Is he ready to go? Is he ready to make a move, make an assault on the bigger guys in the division? I thought he looked, and he does. He always looks really quite lean, and but I thought he looked really light. Checking the weight on the night, but it seemed like everyone was weighing a bit light. So I don't know if the scales that day were just weighing everyone light. I don't know if there was maybe an element of overtraining or even just overthinking, where it'd been so long since he'd fought. Boxing someone who's unbeaten, who's giving away a lot of height and reach. Maybe he didn't get the exact prep that he would get in because of lockdown and things like that. Might not have had the same amount of sparring. But a good win for him and definitely moving in the right direction. I think it's a big 12 months for him now. If he can get out again at the end of the year in another testing fight that would have him knocking on a door for a world title challenge. I think that would be where I'll be looking for if I was looking after Buatsi, if I was his trainer, trying to push him in that direction. I think he'd be ready for that.
Were you impressed with what you saw, or it seems like George certainly seems to be something niggling away at Buatsi, or are there still question marks?
It was a bit of a strange one because he won by stoppage, but everyone was a bit sort of flat afterwards, and like George said, I'm not really sure how he'll be feeling today. I don't know if it was ring rust, but he seemed to get caught a lot. Like his head movement didn't seem like it normally does, and he was getting caught for fun with that straight right hand. Kalic or Chalic, whatever you want to call him, was landing a big long right hand and a left uppercut, basically whenever he wanted to. That wouldn't have helped Buatsi's case to get out of the way of that once the left eye started going. Obviously, that's where the right hand comes from. You're getting caught a lot, which is never ideal, especially not at that stage in your career. Like we spoke about it last week, where he's in that position where he's sort of beaten all comers. He had his sort of easy fights, and he's quite inexperienced. I say inexperienced. He had a good amateur career. Obviously, went to the Olympics and stuff, and boxing the WSB. But there's been this feeling that he needs to be moved along, not carefully, but we're talking about a super talent, and it's about managing that correctly. And he needs that step up between basically beating everyone up, and then he had Paraban, which was sort of a name, and then this one, top of the bill, sort of pressure on him in that sense. And it didn't all go his way. It's not the end of the world. Sometimes that's exactly what you need. Like you need fights at this stage where it's like that and he has to dig in. And the fact is he did stop him in the end, even though it didn't go his way. I mean, all in all, he'll reflect on it well, but it's kind of one of them where a lot of people were a bit alarmed is probably a bit strong, but were a little bit dismayed by how hard he made it. But I think Kalic, it was a lot better than a lot of people thought. He was massive, and I think George, you hit the nail on the head that Buatsi doesn't. I've always thought it, even when I first sort of started speaking to him when he was still an amateur. I've always thought he looks, for light heavyweight, he doesn't look huge. Like if you put him up against Anthony Yard looks massive, physically imposing. It's not to say it's a bad thing. It's just that he doesn't look. He looks quite slight, quite wiry for a light heavyweight. Again, not a problem necessarily as long as you use that correctly. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see what they do with him now. I think there must be some sort of thing. He has to be in big fights and on TV and stuff because he's never, he's not been rolled out as much as I would probably like to see him. And maybe he feels the same. It's a long time out for him. Interesting to see what they do with him next. Like we've banged on about this division. There's big fights at light heavyweight, even just in Britain. Forget the world champions. You can forget the world champions for 2 years and have great fights. But we want to see them made. And at the moment, a lot of people after last night will be picking against him in the fights against Callum Johnson and Anthony Yard. Not necessarily me, but there will be people who are doing that. And again, no bad thing. I'm sure it won't have tested his confidence or anything like that at all. But yeah, it was an interesting fight for him, and I think a useful one in the long run.
It is. It's actually becoming a bit tiresome talking about the division in the UK, as you mentioned. I mean, I've almost put the Yard fight to one side, but I just don't believe that even if Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren ever have this dinner, lunch, breakfast, brunch, whatever they have, I just don't see that fight happening. At least right now. But in the Matchroom stable, you have Callum Johnson, who I know has been out for even longer than Joshua Buatsi. I think 500 days now we're talking. But he could potentially squeeze in a fight between now and December 12th, which I think is what they're looking at for Buatsi. George, is it just time to just put him in? I know we're in this situation. We kind of want fans, but I think the moment Daniel Dubois and George Joyce said, you know what, we've got to do this behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. I think at that point, it's time that everybody just accepted that. And if you're going to have Joshua Pulev as the main event on another pay-per-view, for me, Buatsi, Johnson, chief support, that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I remember speaking to Buatsi, it was maybe a year ago, maybe a little bit longer, and saying like, you and Johnson's a great fight. When it happens, make sure that this is a main event fight that can sell out an arena, once it's built properly. And these are the fights you're going to need to build your name. You're lucky that you're in a division now where there's great fights in Britain and worldwide. So, but the Johnson fight makes a lot of sense. He's been there at world level, gave a good account of himself. It'd be a testing fight, a fight that you will have to improve in the meantime and throughout camp to get over, but it will be a huge statement fight for you, and it will sell out, build properly. It would sell out an O2 Arena or something like that, where obviously if you're not pay-per-view, you want the huge ticket sales in the arena to bump up the purses, but that ain't going to happen now, is it? With the way that sport is in general, you can't rely on an arena being sold to fund fighters' purses. So I know the TV companies are paying a little bit more, but I think that would be a fantastic fight for the end of the year. And if it's part of a pay-per-view card and they're on a, maybe, I don't know what the workings would be, but maybe they could even be on a cut of the pay-per-view sales because they're going to be pushing that figure up there. That's a fight that could be made and should be made. Logical fight for both fighters, I feel, and the best they can get out of the current situation in terms of the way sport is in general around the world. So Buatsi, after a dozen fights now, still obviously only 27 years of age, but in many ways probably does want to get a move on, wants to be fighting for a world title within the next 12 to 18 months so that he's got time to defend it and build a legacy for himself. And to get there, he's going to have to fight people like Callum Johnson, who's obviously, I'm not sure how old Johnson is now, but he's got to be pushing mid-30s, I'd imagine. So he's going to want to be involved in big fights as well. And with the more experience, this would be the right time for him to fight someone who's on the rise, like a Buatsi. So I think that's a fantastic fight, a brilliant fight to add to Povetkin versus White. And who knows if it will happen. Who knows if Johnson will need a warm-up fight first and whether there's actually time for that. But that'd definitely be very good.
Betfair can actually split the two, both at 10 to 11. I'm assuming from what you said earlier that you would fancy Buatsi in that one.
Well, against Callum Johnson? I mean, not necessarily. I must say that, a couple of years ago when it was sort of, they were all on the rise, I would have picked, I remember being asked on another show, it was like, who do you sort of see as the last man standing in that little huddle of them? I thought Buatsi was the one, but I think it's a lot closer than many people think. It's a great style matchup. Johnson's a massive puncher, obviously floored Beterbiev when they boxed. And Buatsi got caught a lot yesterday by Kalic. So, Johnson would definitely be licking his lips now thinking if he lands one. That's if, can I just moan, that's if Callum Johnson's wasn't already in bed last night, like most other casual sports fans or watching Match of the Day too, who would have missed that fight. What are they doing putting a main event on at 11 o'clock on a Sunday night? I just do not get it. We've complained about it before. It's absolutely ridiculous. 11 o'clock at night on a Sunday, and you've got this guy, Joshua Buatsi, in a main event fight in Milton Keynes in a TV studio somewhere. It's just why didn't they put it on as soon as the Liverpool game finished? Why are they putting it on as the same time as Match of the Day 2, when the maddest day in Premier League history and everyone's licking their lips, wishing, can't wait to watch all the goals fly in? You've got Buatsi and Kalic having an absolute ding-dong on the other channel. It's what? I just can't understand it. And I don't know whether we need to get Adam Smith or something on, someone to explain this, but it's just every time it seems to get more and more absurd. I just can't get my head around it.
I think I don't really understand why Eddie Hearn wanted to have a Sunday show, but it feels like something he's wanted to do for a while. And it was on Sky, and Sky had presumably
it was on Arena all night. It was on it was on the channels. They're not they're under pressure. They could have put it on whenever they wanted. It was they got 2 8-rounders on at prime time, and then Buatsi's on when everyone's gone to bed or everyone's watching football. It's so annoying.
I was in the Saturday night football games were, not terrible, but was it Newcastle, Burnley? Anyway.
You're always having to go at Newcastle against them, yeah? Every time. You've got some vendetta against them.
But Sky, they've got to talk to each other. Surely you've got the boxing on Sky, you've got football on Sky, or talk to each other. Say, Eddie, we know you want to do a Sunday show, but maybe not do it this Sunday. Maybe wait for next weekend, international weekends. So, I mean, no one's going to be watching Scotland Slovakia apart from me. So, do it then. I don't know. I mean, as I say, maybe
we're from Slovakia, Mike.
Can't you tell I'm in sunny Scotland right now?
Sunny Bratislava.
Maybe we've got it wrong. Maybe we're missing something. But I just don't
understand. Like I said before, everyone, their target audience, their consumer is on Twitter last night complaining about how late it is on a Sunday. Like, why is it starting at 11 o'clock on a Sunday night? Like, why? And if it's because we want him top of the bill, then just do the whole bill earlier. You've got the channels. People are at home. It's Sunday night. Just stick it on at 9 o'clock. Stick it on straight after the football. Don't let it clash with match of the day. It's just, I don't understand. They must be, unless they're not even thinking, they must be actively deciding to do it at that time, which for me just makes no sense at all. But maybe there's one big explanation that we're all missing. It just, every time, it just totally fries my mind. And I've given too much thought to it over my life. And I think I'm going to have to just stop caring.
Well, it's a Frank Warren show next weekend, so that'll be a midnight start.
That'll be 10 hours.
We will get the answers. So before Joshua Buatsi took to the ring in prime time, indeed, Chantelle Cameron won the WBC Super Lightweight World title. Actually, if we thought Calic was maybe better than we expected, I would argue that Adriana dos Santos Arroyo failed to deliver. She came in heavy for the start, so couldn't actually even win the world title. Had she won, there were some jokes flying about Twitter, but in all seriousness, her choice of outfit, wrong word, but sportswear was it surely wasn't right. Just overall, just really disappointing, George. Her performance, not.
I was still reeling in the outfit gag, which I'm appreciating you slipped that in.
Do you know what I loved is when couldn't find the word for strap, and he was going all through he couldn't find the word for strap, and it was just brilliant. Like fumbling around trying to find the right word without being too politically incorrect. But carry on, George. Brilliant.
But did they pretend she was injured, or say she was injured?
Thought they were injured. It's like something's wrong there. It's like, no, her bra strap keeps falling down her arm.
This is 2020. There is proper sportswear out there now. That's all I'm saying.
Well, yeah, I had Shane McGuigan was around mine yesterday. We watched the boxing together, and obviously you trained Chantelle Cameron, and you learn something new every day, I suppose. And obviously there's like specific type women's wear that you would wear in a boxing match, and Chantelle Cameron's obviously got it. It's a bra under a bra with padding or protection or something, and then just no one's ever relayed that to her opponent. She got in with the t-shirt on, and I thought t-shirt, but all right. And then she took the t-shirt off. I was expecting the t-shirt to go back on after a few rounds. But anyway, let's not talk about that too much. She shaped up real well for the first round, and looked like she knew how to box. Even I know she's a double Olympian and a medalist, but only with a handful of fights. 38, didn't look in shape. Came in 6 pound overweight, and that's not the first time. If you go through her box rec, she fouled the weight. I think the 2 previous WBC eliminator fights she's had, she's fouled the weight as well. So a history of that, and looked well, shaped up well for the first round, and then I don't know if it was conditioning or whatnot. Sort of wasn't able to maintain it. Chantelle Cameron is she's not the fastest to fight. She doesn't have the quickest hand speed, but she's tenacious. She's got a great engine. She keeps like marching forward, throwing shots, and she's got a very good chin. So she's the sort of fighter who would break her opponent's heart, I think, before knocking them out or just making them miss. Is literally she'll suffocate the lady in front of her. And then she just got to a point where I felt that she was racking up the rounds, and it was a foregone conclusion. But great achievement for Chantel to become a world champion, and at light welterweight, because she has fought as light as super feather, so she's now up at light welterweight. Obviously feels more comfortable there since she's been working with Calvin Travis and Jamie Moore. Won a world title, and some big fights out there now, I'm sure, in the women's division for these world titles.
We shouldn't take anything away from Chantel. They obviously had the heartbreak of missing out on the Rio Olympics, and now sort of maybe not conquered, but obviously established herself now as a world champion.
Yeah, I mean, it was just about, you would say, a dream night for her. Won every round, didn't really have too many scares, boxed really well, didn't put a foot wrong or a glove wrong. The opponent wasn't great, but she won't care about that. I mean, she's got pedigree, and like George said, she did look decent at the start, slipping and sliding, hard to pin down. She's just sort of tired. Obviously, her conditioning wasn't there. It was a little bit of a concern when a lot of the pre-fight sort of talk had been about the fact that she gave Katie Taylor a count in amateur bout about 10 years ago. It was like, who cares? So when she turned up, she was 7-1 or something like that. But perfect night's work for Chantelle Cameron. Boxed really well, stuck to her. It would have been easy for her to sort of drift off a bit, especially, round 6, 7, 8. But she didn't. She stuck right to it. Araujo, however we're saying it. She then came out in the last round just throwing everything. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, and now big future for Chantelle Cameron. I mean, she already had a big future anyway, but the Katie Taylor fight is one that's been spoken about for a long time. I don't know what weight they would do it at. I don't know what they would do it for. But I mean, that now becomes a big fight for Katie Taylor, because the Cecilia Breakhill's weird sort of catchweight fight that had been spoken about had surely gone because she lost to McCaskill and whatever else. So Taylor Cameron now becomes a big fight, and they seem more than happy to make women's fights top of the bill. Like we've seen the triple header that they've just announced. So Taylor Cameron now is not sort of on an undercard somewhere. They're saying main event, and rightly so.
I mean, Eddie Hearn's certainly making a concerted effort to sign as many female boxers as possible. And it seems, if a female fighter is going to be on his card, they'll sign with him first, which makes perfect sense and gives him, options depending on the result. But if I do have Katie Taylor as the 9-4 on favourite for that fight against Chantelle Cameron, but probably, George, one of the tougher challenges out there for Katie Taylor, and can I call it a domestic clash? But Britain and Ireland clash.
Yeah, Chantelle Cameron versus Taylor would be a great fight. I think Taylor should still make it the favourite with the boxing ability and the pedigree, but Chantelle will definitely make it tough for her. She's a big girl and strong. Great engine. Will just bite down on the gumshoe if she needs to. Take a shot to land a shot. She's got a great chin. So it'll be a tough night's work. And she's unbeaten. She's ambitious. She wants this Taylor fight. She's been talking about it for years now. So it'd be a great fight. It'd be a good fight. Good one for the fans. Another, you say, not a domestic clash. It's England v Ireland, but relatively domestic clash, and something to get excited about in women's boxing. A big fight on the horizon.
Just finally from Saturday, Declan, I believe you've got a pre-prepared apology for all those fans who
I knew this question was coming. I still maintain that 8-1 was a ridiculous price for that fight. It was more of 50-50. I mean, it doesn't look so ridiculous now. And I did say if he could get through the first 3 rounds without sustaining too much damage, he'd be in with a good chance. He didn't do that. He got dropped heavy, even though it wasn't counted. He was getting caught a lot. I was kind of impressed at times with the way he was making Babic miss. Obviously, a taller and heavier man, moving out the way, landing a couple of shots. He spent quite a lot of time on the ropes, and you could hear Pascal Collins telling him, don't be there, because he's just soaking it up. He landed some good body shots as well on Babic. It makes you think as well that if Babic, the moment he faces someone who's quite big, like obviously a big heavyweight with a bit of pop, it's not going to work. But it's going to be fun while it lasts, this whole Babic ride. And they're talking about Tom Little next. There's all sorts of heavyweights in the mix. I'm still not quite sure why he's not just going at cruiserweight and absolutely like a wrecking ball at cruiserweight. But maybe he sees it as more fun and more exciting, more lucrative, more than anything. But yeah, the Babic train rolls on. Niall Kennedy, he tweeted last night he's not sure what he's got left in the tank, so it might be the end of him. Who knows? A policeman back in Ireland, so he's got a ready-made career that he plugs away at already. But yeah, it was fun. It's weird, isn't it? That sort of a fight happening in front of no one. Two big lumps just whacking each other in silence in front of sort of 40 TV people. It's just bizarre. But that's the world we live in now. If you got on the 8-1, what can I say? Maybe next time.
No, you are absolutely right in what you said. Not that you need my approval, but you are right. It is an interesting one with Babic, George. I mean, maybe Declan's right. Maybe he's just having fun. And I think Dillian Whyte, who sort of looks after him, said at the end, he said to him, be cruiserweight. But maybe Babic just thinks, no, heavyweight's where the glamour is, if you like. And I just want to have fun. He's almost 30. He's only had 5 fights. Maybe he just wants to have a good time.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's like 2 tiers to the heavyweight division as well, isn't there? There's the guys over, 16 plus stone and 6'5", and then there's the rest. And if you're really good, like an Usyk, then you can venture into the real heavyweight division. Otherwise, just have some fun. With the smaller, more sensible type guys. Definitely make cruiserweight. You could, but doesn't feel that it's worth his while, maybe, or just there's more opportunity at heavyweight. And if he's happy to do that, then I think maybe he's right. There's some good fights. Domestic fights even that can be made at heavyweight, especially while you're on the rise as such. So, good on him. Go for it.
It's great quote from Alen Babic, by the way. If someone kills me, I say okay.
He won't be, will he?
If someone kills me, I say okay. I mean, you can't argue with him. He's fun, isn't he? And he can punch.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I haven't got the critics quote written down, but I think it was like he wants to make an army of critics, or something obviously much more poetic and sort of better than that. But I'll dig it out and I'll try and relay it next week. Well, I'll get on, hopefully he puts some more stuff out. It's brilliant.
Yeah, definitely fun. And should he go on to fight Tom Little, he's actually 25-1 on to beat Tom Little, who's 10-1.
10-1. I'm just saying, if he gets through a couple of rounds, Tom Little. I'm telling you though, Tom Little is much better than people give him credit for. He turned into opponent. He's taken fights where he is the opponent, like out in Saudi and stuff like that. But he's a good fighter. I'm just saying, 10-1.
Well, if that happened, I think they're talking about Dillian Whyte's undercard, which should obviously make sense. Yeah. So we'll revisit that one next month. And thankfully this is recorded, so we can just play it over and over again. Let's move on to a quick preview of this weekend's action. Frank Warren returns with another card on Saturday night, headlined by Liam Williams at middleweight against Andrew Robinson. I don't want to be harsh every week. It's essentially a takeover fight. Right, Liam Williams waiting for his shots at Demetrius Andre, the WBO world champion. There's so many good fights to make it middleweight between the world champions right now, or between world champions especially. I know he might not have a choice, Declan, but does Demetrius Andre really want to be taking on Liam Williams in a fight? I know our American counterparts have dismissed this fight on Twitter. I'm not saying it's a bad fight, but it's not. It's just not on Andre's.
No. Talk about who needs him club at the moment. He is one of the many executives on the board, Liam Williams, because since he's moved up in weight, he looks real dangerous. He obviously he's never at the gym. Really good fighter, and without with all due respect to him, in America nobody's heard of him. So you say, American journalists tweeting that it's a nothing fight, and it's who really wants to see that, because they've never seen him fight and they don't know how good he is. And Andrade is not exactly pulling up trees with his opponents either. I believe he's in the mandatory position with the WBO, Williams. I mean, it's just like, why would they go near him? And I don't know, Andre, I don't know what he is like, whether he's someone who keeps an eye on boxing and cares about it and, you know, looks at who's coming up and who's doing this and who's doing that, or whether he doesn't know who Liam Williams is. Like I always say, he won't have any fear whatsoever of anyone, let alone Liam Williams. So it won't be him that's making the decisions. The Zone, as we know, are all about premium opponents and whatever else. And in the meantime, it just means Liam Williams has to go and take, as you say, a takeover fight. Andrew Robinson, decent opponent, decent domestic fighter. I believe I remember seeing him lose to Frank Buglioni. I think that was even on the Fury Chisora fight, the weird one at the XL that time, I think. So ages ago. But yeah, I mean, Liam Williams is a great fighter, possibly the most underrated fighter in Britain at the moment. Not the sort of fight we want to see him in necessarily, but in these times you sort of take anything, and not for the want of trying. He wants that Andre fight, but I just can't see it. Because also, if they made it in America, it would be like, who's this guy Andre's fighting? Why don't he have a good opponent? When really we know the truth is it would be a really good one. That I'd love to see it.
Maybe it's best if Andre. I think Eddie Hearn talked about putting him in with Charlo. So maybe if they can do that and just convince Andre to give up the belt, maybe that's Liam Williams' best chance, and then fight for the vacant title. But he's certainly improved, George, since his back-to-back fights with Liam Smith, which in themselves were excellent. But he's rebuilt well, and again, it's a classic story of it's never I imagine it's very rarely the boxer's fault if their career stalls in this way. It's politics or it's something else.
Yeah, I think good point from Deck that he could be one of the best underrated fighters in Britain. He's tough. He's technically a lot better than you initially would give him credit for. He's got good resume and he's in good form. And maybe an option might be that Andrade don't think that it's necessarily a fight worth having, and he looks to vacate and fight for another world title, fight Charlo, and he gets his shot at a vacant. Frank Warren does amazing things with WBO sometimes, and sometimes stuff does just crop up because he's ahead of the curve in terms of what can be done with these guys. So, I'd like to see him just get his chance, get his shot. A good ambassador for the sport. He's happy to be a little bit outspoken as such. He'll have a moan if you don't think things are right and just, and I've always appreciated that in a fighter. And I think he's deserving of an opportunity to fight for a world title. I hope he gets one soon, but I don't think he's gonna have many problems next weekend. I think he's defense of the British title. Good for him.
Betfair do not disagree. 50-1 on. I'm not even sure Declan will be taking Andrew Robinson. Sorry, at 14-1.
Not even having a bit of the draw there. No thanks.
No. Actually, didn't you also? I think you almost covered all your bases on the weekend. You sort of convinced or tempted people with the draw in Kennedy Babic as well.
Put it this way, I didn't back the draw.
And if you don't back the draw, it's not.
Nobody will.
And finally, for this week, we'll just take a look at what's going on in the news. And Deontay Wilder, to be fair, has followed through with a promise he made way back 8 months ago in February and has parted ways, dismissed, sacked Mark Breland from his team. Of course, Breland was the one who threw in the towel against Tyson Fury in the rematch. I think there's two parts to this. We'll talk about the fact that Wilder seems to be hiding somewhere, whether that's because he's training hard or actually hiding. But George, whether or not you think it was the right decision, it was. If you come out publicly, as Wilder did, and actually like Jay Diaz did as well on the night, criticising your trainer, it's very hard to continue. Really, it was probably inevitable they were going to part ways.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think some of the things that Deontay Wilder has said and done is a little bit confusing. You think you've made a problem for yourself here, and this might be one of them where he was so vehement about the trainer stopping the fight that his hand's been forced on this situation. He can't really show weakness by not moving on. So I don't know. I think it was the right decision to throw the towel in that night. So I thought, this is not necessarily the right decision to part ways. But I think Wilder he'd gone quiet. I think that, as I say, I think that's a good thing for now. Did that thing. Maybe it's an American thing. Maybe I'm being ignorant by saying that. But he didn't own up to anything as such. Didn't own up to his shortcomings to come again, and therefore kind of make him a little bit more endearing to the general public. I think he's just hoping to rewrite history in a trilogy fight where he can win and then put the rest to bed and pretend it was all just a bad dream or a bad day at the office or whatnot. But I don't know. He wasn't nowhere near good enough in that rematch. He come out and made excuses for it rather than just holding his hands up, which would have been much more believable. And then he could have just held his hands up and said, "I got it wrong. I need to make changes, but believe me, I'll be better." And then there'll be enough people out there that would certainly believe that, or even if they didn't necessarily believe it, but couldn't necessarily write it off, that wouldn't be the truth. So, I don't know, heavyweight division. It's one everyone's always going to want to talk about. Wilder's still a huge name, but I don't know. Is there any talk about who's in to replace him, or is he just had a little shuffle around with his existing team, or what? I'm not sure.
I mean, is the thing with that whole training team is that JD's is the main man, so to speak. He's like the head coach. They always talk about it as like an American football sort of analogy, which is appropriate being from Tuscaloosa. But JD's was the guy where Wilder walked in the gym and he's had him the whole time. And the only reason they got him in, JD was a boxing fanatic. He was actually an old TV reporter, but had all these old videos, and he stumbled across Mark Breland at an amateur tournament once, got talking to him and said, "I've got these videos of yours." And Mark said, "Yeah, I'd love a bit of that." They got in touch, and Jay thought, right, okay, let's bring him in to help because he's got that nous, he's got that know-how. Obviously as well, Breland, a tall, long guy who generated mad power from the straight 1-2, even given his lean frame. So there was a bit of a idea that that's going to work, and it did because it got Wilder knockouts. But he was still just not peripheral as such, but he was brought in for the last 6 weeks or so of camp and flown down from New York, and they put him up in the Ramada Inn in Tuscaloosa, and he would do the pads. He would do certain things, but he was still working with Malik Scott. He was working with another coach and Jay as well. So it's a big team going on there. So it's not quite as massive as Wilder, as Fury, for instance, getting rid of Davidson, sacking the main guy. It's just a reshuffle as far as I can tell. One thing which is a bit strange is obviously Breland, being a Kronk fighter himself, would have known Sugar Hill, would have known the sort of thing they'd be working on, so had a little bit of insider knowledge there. That's gone now. Also, he did he made the big call and then threw in the towel. It's like, if that happens again in the third fight, and it might do, is someone going to save him again? Are they going to get someone in and tell him they're not allowed? Are they going to give anyone a towel to even hold in the corner? Like, it's impossible to know what they're thinking here. There was a weird tweet from Malik Scott about he had got kicked out because he apparently had spiked Wilder's drink. Someone had accused him of that. But he's back on the scene now. So it's all just a bit weird. Not ideal preparation. It seems like for once Fury's camp is the one that's serene. I mean, it's all building up to be a great fight if it happens again, because we know what Fury's come out and said that it might not. So who knows? Who knows if it will really affect Wilder in any way, if it might be the best thing for them to have done. I still don't see him beating Fury, to be honest, in a month of Sundays, as they say.
It's definitely a strange one with respect to the trilogy. I think we were on the third date. We had July, we had October, we had December 19th. But now that can't happen because of the NFL. Bob Arum hasn't ruled it out happening this year. He does seem to be making some progress in terms of fans. I think Vegas will have fans for Leo Santa Cruz. I think I'm right in saying that. There will be some fans there. So there's progress being made, so it's not impossible. But it's now October. We're talking, it's not going to be after December 19th, as in before the end of the year. So we're talking less than 8 weeks now for biggest heavyweight fight, well, outside Fury, Joshua. I just, something to me is going on. I know, George, you've said Wilder being quiet is probably not a bad thing, but nobody's saying anything. His team haven't said anything. It's just Bob Arum. I wonder what's really going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, something might be going on with Wilder. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything to add. They just sort of might just be jostling around trying to find a suitable date. They might be on some sort of minimum purse that, with an upside where they're struggling to reach that minimum sort of threshold without, a huge Vegas show that's going to sell loads of tickets or something like that, or a big site fee paid somewhere. So, as a fighter, you want it to, personally, you don't want it sort of nailed down and announced with, say, 6 weeks to go. Even if you've been made aware of the date for some time, you want to get your head in the game early, get mentally prepared so you can really train and focus properly. It's difficult to do that without a confirmed date. I'm sure these guys will be the same. So who knows?
But it complicates it. I know Fury's come out and said he wants to fight this year regardless, but he's got a contract with ESPN. And I'm sure, if Josh says if he's on guaranteed money, it's not as easy as I assume. That's just saying, yeah, we'll put you in behind closed doors in Milton Keynes in December.
Yeah, I guess there'd be some sort of contract, a bit like Canelo, where he's guaranteed this amount of money, particularly because he signed such a big multi-fight deal. And now one would assume that it ain't going to be that much because they can't get people in the gate. And then it's not as simple as, well, they're not going to come in real life. That means they're going to buy on pay-per-view, so we'll get this many more sales. It's obviously not as simple as that. And I don't know if the waters have just muddied contractually, like a lot of contracts are, like Canelo's, for instance, because of what's happened in the wider world. It's an interesting one. It's all getting a bit tedious for people within boxing. I dread to think what it's looking like to people, who aren't that invested in it and just like dip in and out. It's just sort of like, well, nobody's fighting, and we'll have to wait and see. But it would be nice to see them get that on, because we need to sort of move on from it, don't we? Because he's got a draw, he's won conclusively, and it's like the third one's just sort of hanging around now. So it would be nice if they could get that one sorted and everyone can get paid. And then if Wilder comes back and turns it around and becomes a champion again, amazing, good for him. Then we go from there. But as it stands, we're all just waiting around, and it's not good for the heavyweight division.
So between main event times and Deontay Wilder's whereabouts, we've got plenty of mysteries to solve for next week. So if you can get on that, we will touch base on them again in the future, I'm sure. But that is all for this week. If you're watching on YouTube, please do hit the subscribe button. It does make a difference. And thank you, George. Thank you, Dick. We'll be back next week with a review of Williams fight, of course, and looking ahead to what's coming up next.